The dust never settled in Iron Ridge. Sam Porter stood at his kitchen window, watching the wind carve patterns through the empty pastures that surrounded his ranch like a promise broken. The land stretched out in shades of brown and gray, 40 acres of cracked earth and dying grass that hadn't seen rain in 4 months. His grandfather had built this place with bare hands and stubborn hope. His father had kept it running through droughts and recessions. Now it was Sam's turn to hold on, and his grip was slipping. The phone on the wall rang. Sam didn't move to answer it. He knew who it was, Third National Bank. They'd been calling every morning at 9 o'clock for 2 weeks. The mortgage was 3 months behind. The extension they had granted him had expired. They wanted answers Sam didn't have, and money that didn't exist. The ringing stopped, then started again. Sam turned away from the window and let it ring. His hands were calloused from work that produced nothing. His bank account held $73. His refrigerator contained a jar of mustard and half a loaf of bread. The cattle he'd sold last month had barely covered the feed bills, and there was nothing left to sell except the land itself. At 38 years old, Sam Porter was watching his family's legacy die. He needed to drive into town for fuel. The truck was running on fumes, and he had a fence to check on the eastern boundary. He grabbed his wallet from the counter, thin leather worn soft with age, and counted the bills inside. 2 20s, a 10, a 5, and 3 1s. $58 to last until what? There was no paycheck coming, no windfall, just more bills and more dust and the slow suffocation of dreams. The drive into Iron Ridge took 20 minutes on the state highway. The town was barely a town anymore. A gas station, a feed store, a diner that served breakfast all day, and a bank that had foreclosed on half the properties within 50 miles. Sam pulled into the quick stop and began filling his tank, watching the digital numbers climb with each gallon, calculating how much he could afford. A commotion drew his attention to the far side of the parking lot. A crowd had gathered around a livestock trailer hitched to a rust-eaten pickup. Voices rose in a mix of laughter and disgust. Sam replaced the fuel nozzle at $40, enough to get him through the week if he was careful, and walked over to see what was happening. He had no idea that what he was walking toward would change the fate of Iron Ridge forever. But real quick, before we see what's inside that trailer, if you enjoy these gritty stories about survival and second chances, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It really helps us bring these stories to life. Now, let's see what the commotion was all about. The trailer was a disaster. Dents covered the metal sides. One wheel had no hubcap, and inside, visible through the gaps in the slats, was a horse. No, not a horse. A nightmare. The animal was massive, easily 17 hands tall, with a matted coat so covered in mud it was impossible to tell what color it might be. Its mane was a tangled mess that hung in clumps. Ribs showed through the filth. But what captured everyone's attention was its behavior. The horse was fighting. It kicked the walls with hooves that rang like gunshots against the metal. It struck out with its front legs, trying to bash through the trailer gate. It screamed, a sound of pure rage that made people step back and laugh nervously. A man stood at the trailer's gate, wielding a long stick. He was in his 50s, wearing stained coveralls and a face red with exertion and anger. Every time the horse moved, he jabbed with the stick through the slats. "Settle down, you worthless devil," the man shouted, striking harder. The horse reared, its head slamming into the trailer roof with a sound that made Sam wince. "What's going on?" Sam asked a woman standing nearby. "Jake Tucker bought that wild thing at an auction last month, thinking he could break it and sell it for riding lessons. But it's crazy. Won't let anyone near it. He's taking it to the rendering plant over in Cooperville. Dog food factory, pays by the pound." Sam felt something cold settle in his stomach. He's killing it? What else you gonna do with a horse like that? Can't ride it, can't work it. It's dangerous and costs money to feed. Better off dead than starving, if you ask me. Nobody had asked her, but she'd answered anyway. Sam moved closer to the trailer. Through the slats, he could see the horse's eye, a dark orb surrounded by white, wild with fear and fury. The animal was terrified, trapped, fighting because it didn't know any other way to survive. Sam knew that feeling. "How much you want for it?" Sam heard himself say. The crowd went quiet. Jake Tucker stopped poking with his stick and turned to stare. "What?" "The horse. How much?" Jake laughed, a sound like gravel in a bucket. "You serious?" This thing will kill you the first chance it gets. I've had horses my whole life, and I've never seen one this mean. I didn't ask for your resume. I asked your price. Jake's expression shifted from amusement to calculation. Well, now, I was gonna get about 200 for it at the plant, once I factor in gas and my time driving out there. But if you want to take this devil off my hands right here, right now, I'll save myself the trouble. $500. Sam's jaw tightened. $500 might as well have been $5 million. I'll give you 10. The crowd erupted in laughter. Even Jake smiled, shaking his head. $10? Are you out of your mind? Sam pulled out his wallet and removed the $10 bill. He held it up. It's what I've got. Take it or don't. Jake's smile faded. He looked at Sam, then at the horse, then at the crowd that was watching to see what he'd do. Pride warred with practicality on his weathered face. The drive to Cooperville was an hour each way, and the horse was getting more agitated by the minute. You know what? Fine. $10. It's your funeral. Jake snatched the bill from Sam's hand. But when it tramples you to death, don't come crying to me. Deal. Jake unhooked the trailer gate and swung it open. The horse exploded out like a cork from a bottle, nearly knocking Jake over. It landed in the parking lot, legs splayed, head up, eyes rolling. People scattered. Someone screamed. The horse stood there, trembling, ready to bolt or fight or both. Sam didn't move. He just watched. And as he watched, something strange happened. The horse's wild eyes found his. For a moment, just a breath. The animal went still. It looked at Sam, and Sam looked back. In that gaze, Sam saw exhaustion. He saw pain and betrayal, and the kind of bone-deep tiredness that came from fighting too long with no help coming. He saw himself. Easy, Sam said quietly. Not to the crowd, not to Jake Tucker, but to the horse. I'm not going to hurt you. The horse's ears flicked forward. Its nostrils flared, testing the air. Sam took one step forward. The crowd held its breath. The horse's muscles tensed, ready to run. But it didn't run. It stayed, watching. Sam took another step, then another. Slow, steady. Showing he meant no harm. When he was close enough to touch, Sam extended his hand, palm down, fingers relaxed. The horse lowered its head and sniffed. Its breath was hot and smelled of fear and hay. Then, slowly, so slowly Sam barely believed it was happening, the horse's muzzle touched his palm. Contact. You're coming home with me, Sam said, and nobody's ever going to hit you again. He had no lead rope, no halter, nothing to control 1,000 pounds of traumatized horse. But when Sam turned and started walking toward his truck, the horse followed, 10 feet behind at first, then 5. By the time they reached the highway, the horse was walking at Sam's shoulder, keeping pace. The crowd watched in silence as man and beast walked away together. Jake Tucker shook his head. He'll regret that in about an hour. But Sam didn't regret it, not during the 5-mile walk back to his ranch in the afternoon heat, not when his feet blistered in his boots, not when the horse spooked at passing cars, and Sam had to talk it calm again and again. He named the horse Baron, because something about the way it moved, even exhausted and filthy, carried a dignity that demanded respect. They reached the ranch as the sun touched the horizon. Sam opened the gate to the main pasture, and Baron walked through, then stopped and looked back at Sam with an expression that might have been gratitude or might have been confusion. Sam had no grain to offer, no fancy supplements. He brought out the apples from his kitchen, 3 old ones going soft, and a chunk of stale bread. He set them on the ground and stepped back. Baron approached carefully, still expecting punishment. When none came, he ate, and for the first time in months, Sam felt something that wasn't despair, hope. The first month with Baron tested every ounce of patience Sam possessed. The horse was terrified of everything. A sudden movement would send him running to the far corner of the pasture. The sound of the truck engine made him rear and strike. When Sam tried to approach with a brush to clean the caked mud from his coat, Baron would pin his ears and bare his teeth. Sam didn't force it. He'd learned from his grandfather that trust couldn't be beaten into an animal. It had to be earned. Every morning, Sam would sit on the fence rail with his coffee and talk to Baron. Just talk. About the weather, about the ranch, about nothing and everything. The horse would watch from a distance, ears swiveling to catch every word. Every evening, Sam would bring whatever food he could spare. His own meals got smaller so Barron's could exist. Carrots when the neighbor had extras. Hay when Sam found someone selling cheap. Apples from the tree behind the old barn that nobody had picked in years. Slowly, the distance between them shrank. 1 week, 2, 3. By the end of the first month, Barron would let Sam touch his shoulder, then his neck, finally his face. Sam began the painstaking work of grooming, hours spent brushing away the mud, untangling the mane, cleaning the hooves that had been neglected for who knew how long. As the filth came away, something remarkable emerged. Barron's coat wasn't brown or black or bay. It was silver, a shimmering metallic silver that caught the sunlight and seemed to glow. Sam had never seen anything like it. It looked expensive, like the horse belonged to royalty, not a failing ranch in the middle of nowhere. "What are you?" Sam murmured one afternoon, running his hand down Barron's neck. "And how did someone like me end up with someone like you?" Barron's only answer was to rest his massive head on Sam's shoulder, breathing softly. The horse's personality began to show. He was intelligent, scary intelligent. He learned to unlatch the gate after watching Sam do it once. He figured out that the feed bucket was stored in the barn and would stand outside the door at feeding time, waiting with exaggerated patience. He had opinions about everything and made them known through elaborate displays of emotion that were almost human in their clarity. But more than anything, Barron became Sam's shadow. Wherever Sam worked, Barron followed. Fixing fence in the north pasture, Barron walked alongside. Repairing the barn roof, Barron stood below, supervising. Sitting on the porch at sunset, Barron's head appeared over Sam's shoulder, demanding attention. They were no longer owner and horse. They were companions, friends. The transformation wasn't just physical. Barron's wild behavior, the kicking, the striking, the screaming rage, had been fear, Sam realized. Fear of humans who'd hurt him. Fear of confinement. Fear of betrayal that came from hands that should have been gentle but had been cruel instead. As trust built between them, the fear receded. Barron still had moments of panic when something triggered a memory of past trauma, the crack of a branch that sounded like a whip, the sudden appearance of a stranger, anything that moved too fast or spoke too loud. But Sam learned to read the signs, to anticipate the triggers, to talk Barron through the panic with his voice and his presence and the promise that safety was real and permanent. The neighbors noticed the changes. The same people who'd laughed at Sam for buying a worthless devil would slow their trucks when passing, watching Barron graze in the pasture, his silver coat gleaming, his movements graceful despite his size. Some pretended not to be impressed. Others stopped pretending. Tom Henderson pulled up one afternoon while Sam was fixing a water trough, Barron standing nearby, providing moral support in the form of occasionally nibbling Sam's hat. "That's some horse you've got there," Tom said, his tone grudging admission rather than compliment. "Thanks. Still think you're crazy for spending money on him when you're about to lose your land. But I'll admit, he cleaned up better than expected." Sam straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Tom, you ever consider that maybe some things matter more than being practical? That maybe rescuing something broken has value even if it doesn't make financial sense?" Tom looked uncomfortable. "That's a nice philosophy for people who can afford it. You're 3 months behind on your mortgage." "I know exactly how behind I am. Doesn't change the fact that Barron needed help, and I could provide it. Some choices aren't about money. Everything's about money when you don't have any." After Tom drove away, Sam stood at the fence looking at his ranch, the crumbling barn, the rusted equipment, the pastures that hadn't been productive in years. Tom was right about the practical reality. The bank would foreclose. Sam would lose everything his family had built. Barron had cost him grocery money, time, and resources he couldn't spare. But when Barron walked over and rested his head on Sam's shoulder, breathing softly, trusting completely, Sam couldn't regret the choice, wouldn't regret it even when the bank came to take the land. Because some things transcended practicality. Some connections mattered more than property or profit or the judgment of people who measured worth in dollars. The bank kept calling. The mortgage kept going unpaid. But somehow, the crushing weight of failure felt lighter with Barron around. Having something to care for, something that depended on him, gave Sam a reason to keep fighting. Sam started taking odd jobs around Iron Ridge to supplement the nothing he was earning from his ranch. He hauled hay for neighbors, fixed fences, repaired machinery, any work that paid cash and didn't interfere with the time he needed to spend with Barron. The money was never enough, always falling short of what the bank demanded, but it kept them fed and bought the supplies Barron needed. One morning in late June, Sam found Barron standing at the pasture gate, not moving. His weight shifted oddly. Sam's heart clenched with sudden fear. Was the horse injured? Sick? Had something happened during the night? He approached quickly, hands gentle, searching for obvious problems. And found them. Barron was standing on 3 legs, keeping his right rear hoof elevated. When Sam examined it carefully, he found a deep crack in the hoof wall, the kind of damage that came from months of neglect before Sam had taken ownership, now manifesting as the hoof grew out and the old damage revealed itself. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was serious. Barron needed a farrier, professional care, the kind of expense Sam absolutely couldn't afford. Sam made calls from the phone at the feed store, getting quotes from farriers in the area. The cheapest was $200 for evaluation and corrective shoeing. $200 Sam didn't have and couldn't borrow. He sat on his porch that evening, Barron grazing nearby on 3 legs, and felt the weight of inadequacy crushing down. He'd saved this horse from slaughter, had nursed him back to health, had given him trust and safety and care, and now Barron needed help Sam couldn't provide. The business card was still in Sam's wallet. Ray Anderson Performance Horses. The man who'd offered $300,000 for Barron, the man who'd said to call if Sam ever needed anything. Sam turned the card over in his hands, temptation warring with pride. He didn't want charity, didn't want to be the broke farmer asking for handouts. But Barron needed help, and Sam's pride mattered less than the horse's well-being. He drove into town the next morning and used the payphone at the quick stop, dialing the number on the card. Ray Anderson answered on the 3rd ring. Anderson Performance Horses. Mr. Anderson, this is Sam Porter from Iron Ridge. We met a few months back when you had the flat tire. Sam, of course I remember. How are you? How's that magnificent silver stallion? He's got a hoof problem, crack in the wall from old neglect. Needs a farrier, but I can't afford one. And I remembered you said to call if I needed anything, and I hate asking, but say no more. I've got a farrier on staff here who owes me a favor. I'll have him drive out tomorrow, no charge. Consider it professional courtesy between horsemen. Sam's throat tightened. Mr. Anderson, I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. That horse deserves proper care, and you've proven you're committed to giving it to him. Let me help make that possible. Ray paused. Besides, I meant what I said when we met. Relationships like yours with Barron are rare, worth preserving. I consider it an honor to support that. The farrier arrived the next afternoon, a quiet man named Pete, who approached Barron with the calm competence of someone who'd worked with difficult horses his entire career. Barron, who'd have been aggressive with strangers months ago, accepted Pete's examination with only mild anxiety, trusting that if Sam said it was okay, it was okay. Pete worked for 3 hours, trimming and shaping, and finally fitting a special shoe that would support the hoof while the crack grew out. He showed Sam how to apply poultice, how to monitor for problems, when to call if things weren't healing properly. Mr. Anderson told me about this horse, Pete said as he packed his tools. Said he's something special. I can see it. His structure is remarkable, and the trust he's got in you, that's earned, not bought. You're doing good work here, Sam. After Pete left, Sam stood with Barron in the late afternoon sun, watching the horse test his weight on the newly shod hoof, seeing relief in those dark eyes as pain eased for the first time in who knew how long. We're getting by, Sam told Barron quietly. It's not pretty and it's not easy, but we're making it work. You and me. We're family now, and family doesn't give up on each other. Barron rumbled his agreement, pressing his head against Sam's chest. The summer ground on, hot and dry, the drought showing no signs of breaking. Sam's financial situation didn't improve, but it didn't catastrophically collapse either. He stayed exactly 1 step ahead of complete disaster, earning just enough to keep the bank at bay for another month, then another, living day to day in a kind of suspended crisis that became its own form of normal. And through it all, Barron thrived. His hoof healed, his coat gleamed, his body filled out with muscle that came from good feed and exercise, and the contentment of a creature that had found safety after knowing only fear. Other ranchers started asking about him. Where had Sam found him? What bloodline was he? Would Sam consider breeding him? Sam deflected the questions. Barron's past was a mystery Sam hadn't unraveled, and his future, well, that depended on whether Sam could hold on to the ranch long enough for there to be a future. Then came the day that changed everything. It was early August when the storm appeared, one of those summer systems that built rapidly on the horizon, transforming from distant clouds to immediate threat within an hour. Sam was working on the tractor, trying to coax the engine to life so he could move it to higher ground before the storm hit. The machine was old and temperamental, but it was all he had. The first drops of rain were almost shocking after months of drought. Sam felt them on his skin and looked up at clouds that had gone from gray to black, rotating with the particular violence that preceded serious weather. He needed to get the tractor to higher ground. The small creek that ran through his property had been dry for months, but Sam remembered his grandfather's stories about flash floods, about how quickly water could transform from absent to overwhelming when storms hit the parched earth with more rain than it could absorb. The tractor started reluctantly, engine coughing and sputtering. Sam drove it toward the northern hill, away from the creek bed, racing against time and weather that was now arriving in force. The rain intensified, going from drops to sheets, visibility collapsing to almost nothing. And then Sam saw it, a wall of water. The creek wasn't dry anymore. It was a river, a raging torrent of brown water that carried debris and force that looked capable of destroying anything in its path. The flash flood had arrived faster than Sam had anticipated, fed by rain hitting the mountains upstream, funneling into the valley where his ranch sat. Sam accelerated, trying to reach high ground, but the tractor was old and slow, and the water was fast and unstoppable. The ground beneath him transformed from solid to saturated in seconds. The tractor's wheels spun in mud that had appeared from nowhere. The vehicle began to slide sideways, pulled by currents Sam couldn't fight. He tried to jump clear, but the tractor tipped, its weight shifting as mud gave way beneath it. Sam felt himself falling, felt the machine rolling, felt crushing weight as the tractor came down on his right leg. Pain exploded through his body, white-hot and absolute. He screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of rushing water. The flood reached him, cold water that rose with terrifying speed, filling the depression where the tractor had pinned him. Sam struggled, trying to lift himself, trying to move the crushing weight, but the machine was too heavy and his leg was trapped, and the water kept rising, to his chest, to his shoulders, his neck. Sam screamed for help, but there was no one to hear. The nearest neighbor was a mile away. Barron was in the barn, hopefully safe, unable to understand that Sam was dying in a field less than 100 yards from the house. The water reached Sam's chin. He was going to die here, pinned under his grandfather's tractor in the land his family had worked for generations. The bank would take the property. Barron would be sold at auction, probably ending up back in the system that had abused him. All the work, all the sacrifice, all the hope, erased in minutes by water that didn't care about dreams or determination, or the stubborn refusal to quit. Sam's vision began to tunnel, oxygen deprivation, his body shutting down. He had maybe a minute left before unconsciousness, maybe 3 before death became irreversible. And then he heard it, faint beneath the roar of the flood, but unmistakable. A scream, not human, equine, barren. The barn door exploded outward with the sound of splintering wood. The latch Sam had carefully installed, destroyed by 1,200 pounds of silver horse that had decided confinement was no longer acceptable. Barron burst into the storm like something mythical, his coat dark with rain, his mane streaming, his eyes wild but focused. He'd heard Sam scream. Somehow, through the storm and distance and the roar of the flood, Barron had heard his human in distress and made a choice that defied every instinct that told horses to flee from danger, to seek safety, to prioritize self-preservation over anything else. Barron galloped through rising water toward where Sam was trapped, his powerful legs driving through currents that would have swept smaller animals away. His movement was that floating stride Sam had admired, that suspension at the peak of each motion that made it look like he was flying rather than running, but now amplified by urgency and determination. The horse reached Sam and stopped, standing over him, his body creating a slight break in the current. Barron's head lowered, touching Sam's. and Sam felt breath that was hot despite the cold rain, felt presence that was solid and real, and somehow offering hope in a situation where hope shouldn't exist. "Baron," Sam gasped, water touching his lips now, his remaining time measured in seconds. "Go, get safe, can't help." But Baron could help, and he would. The horse assessed the situation with intelligence that seemed impossible for an animal, but which Sam had witnessed repeatedly over the past months. Baron moved to the trapped tractor, positioning himself alongside it, his powerful body aligned with the machine's weight. Sam understood what Baron was trying to do, and felt his heart break. "You can't. It's too heavy. You'll hurt yourself." Baron ignored him. The horse planted his hooves in mud that barely provided purchase, his body gathering itself, every muscle tensing for an effort that exceeded anything Sam had asked of him before. And Baron pushed, his massive shoulder pressed against the tractor's side, his legs driving with force that made the ground tremble. The veins in his neck stood out like ropes. His breathing became labored, great huffing exhales that turned to steam in the rain. He groaned, a sound that was pure physical strain, almost human in its expression of effort beyond normal capacity. The tractor didn't move. Baron reset his position and pushed harder, harder than should have been possible. His body producing force that went beyond muscle and bone into something else. Will made physical, loyalty transformed into strength that defied limitation. The tractor shifted, just half an inch. But half an inch was everything. Sam felt pressure ease fractionally on his trapped leg. It was still pinned, still crushed, but the tiny amount of give allowed him to move slightly, to work his body in ways that had been impossible seconds before. Baron pushed again, his body trembling with effort, his hooves digging deep into mud, his entire being committed to moving weight that most horses couldn't budge. And slowly, impossibly, the tractor shifted more. Sam used every ounce of remaining strength to pull his leg free. Pain whited out his vision completely, his nervous system overloading from trauma that included shattered bone and damaged tissue, but his leg came free, no longer. Trapped, no longer pinned. Baron sensed the change immediately. He stopped pushing and repositioned, moving to stand over Sam, lowering himself despite the deep water, allowing Sam to grab his mane with hands that barely functioned. "Pull," Sam gasped. "Get us out." Baron rose, Sam's weight adding to the burden, and began moving toward higher ground. His steps were careful, testing each footfall, compensating for the human clinging to his back, fighting current that tried to separate them. The floating stride Sam had admired was gone now, replaced with raw determination and effort that bordered on beyond what flesh and blood could sustain. They moved slowly, agonizingly, every step forward earned through sheer will. Baron's breathing was labored, his body shaking with exhaustion, but he didn't stop, didn't quit, just kept moving with the same stubborn refusal to surrender that had kept Sam fighting when everyone else had given up on him. They reached the porch as Sam's consciousness began failing, his body shutting down from shock and pain and the compound trauma of near drowning and crushing injury. Baron climbed the steps, something horses shouldn't do, something that went against their instincts about footing and safety, and lowered himself to his knees on the wooden planks, allowing Sam to slide from his back onto the solid surface. And then Baron stood over him, his body blocking wind and rain, his warmth radiating downward, keeping Sam conscious through sheer presence until the storm passed and help could arrive. Sam woke in the hospital 3 days later. The details came in fragments. Neighbors had found him on the porch after the storm, Baron standing guard, refusing to let anyone approach until they'd proven they meant no harm. The horse had stayed there for 6 hours, through the worst of the storm and into the evening until finally being coaxed away with the promise that Sam would be cared for. His leg was shattered, multiple fractures, extensive soft tissue damage, injuries that would require surgery and months of recovery, but he was alive, because of Baron. The doctor explained that without immediate pressure relief, Sam would have drowned within 2 minutes of when Baron had reached him. The horse's actions, breaking out of the barn, reaching Sam, moving the tractor, had been the difference between life and death. "That's an extraordinary animal," the doctor said. "I've never heard of a horse doing something like that. Most would have fled from the storm, but yours ran toward danger to save you." Sam spent a week in the hospital, his leg in a cast, his body recovering from hypothermia and trauma. Tom Henderson visited on the third day, looking uncomfortable and holding his hat in his hands. "Heard what happened," Tom said. "That horse of yours saved your life." "He did. I owe you an apology. For saying he was worthless, for telling you that you'd wasted your money." Tom paused, struggling with words. "I was wrong. About the horse. Maybe about other things too. Appreciate that, Tom. If you need help with the ranch while you're recovering, I can send my boys over. No charge. Figure it's the least I can do." Other neighbors visited too, bringing similar offers, similar apologies. The story of Barron's rescue had spread through Iron Ridge, transforming Sam from the foolish farmer who'd wasted money on a broken horse into something else. The man whose loyalty to an animal had been rewarded with loyalty in return. When Sam was finally released, Tom drove him home. Barron was waiting in the pasture, and when he saw Sam emerge from the truck on crutches, the horse galloped to the fence, calling out with a sound that was pure relief and joy. Sam hobbled to the fence as fast as his crutches allowed, his cast-making movement awkward. Barron pressed his head against Sam's chest, breathing hard, trembling slightly, clearly emotional in ways that horses weren't supposed to be. "I'm okay," Sam told him, his hands stroking that silver neck. "You saved me. You incredible, magnificent creature. You saved my life." Barron nickered softly, his eyes showing something that looked suspiciously like tears. The farm situation hadn't improved. If anything, Sam's medical bills had made things worse. But the community rallied in ways that surprised him. Neighbors brought meals, helped with chores, made sure both Sam and Barron were cared for during the recovery period. And then, 2 weeks after Sam returned home, a car appeared in his driveway. Not just any car, an expensive sedan with dealer plates. Ray Anderson climbed out, followed by a younger man carrying a camera. "Sam," Ray called, walking toward the porch where Sam was sitting, with his injured leg elevated. "I heard about what happened, about Barron saving you. Came to see if the stories were true." "They're true," Sam confirmed. Ray looked at Barron, who was grazing nearby, and his expression showed wonder. "In 35 years of training horses, I've never seen or heard of anything like that. A horse recognizing its owner was in danger, breaking out of confinement, physically moving a tractor to free him, then providing protection until help arrived." He shook his head. "Sam, that's not just remarkable. That's unprecedented. It speaks to a level of intelligence and emotional connection that defies normal understanding of equine behavior." The younger man was filming Barron with his camera, capturing the horse from multiple angles. "This is Derek," Ray explained. "He works for Western Horseman magazine. I called them about Barron's story, and they want to do a feature, a real feature, full spread, professional photos, the whole story about rescue and recovery and loyalty beyond measure." Sam felt uncomfortable with the attention. "I don't know if—" "There's more," Ray interrupted gently. "I've been making calls to breed associations, to preservation societies, to people who care about exceptional bloodlines and rare horses. Barron's story, combined with his abilities and characteristics, has generated significant interest. People want to see him, want to document him. Some want to study him, to understand how genetics and training create an animal capable of what he did. He's not a science experiment. I know that. And I've made it clear to everyone that Barron stays with you, non-negotiable. But Sam, there's an opportunity here, not to sell him or exploit him, but to let his story inspire people, to show that broken things can heal, that loyalty matters, that the bond between human and animal transcends economic value." Ray pulled out a folder and handed it to Sam. "Multiple organizations want to contribute to Barron's care. Regular veterinary visits, high-quality feed, proper farrier work, training equipment, all provided free of charge in exchange for documentation of his story and occasional public appearances where people can see him." Sam looked through the papers, seeing offers from breed associations, from rescue organizations, from educational programs that wanted to use Barron's story to teach about animal welfare and rehabilitation. "They're also offering a sponsorship," Ray continued. "Basically, companies want to support Barron's care because his story resonates with their values. The money would go directly to you for his maintenance, with no strings attached beyond allowing occasional publicity." The amounts listed made Sam's head spin, enough to cover Barron's needs, enough to make meaningful progress on the mortgage. Not enough to save the ranch outright, but enough to buy time. "Why?" Sam asked. Why do they care this much? Because people are tired of stories about exploitation and cruelty and treating animals as disposable. Baron's story, your story, is about redemption and loyalty and love that transcends species. It's the kind of story people need right now, and they want to support it. Sam looked at Baron, who had stopped grazing and was watching the conversation with those intelligent eyes. The horse had saved Sam's life, had proven that the connection between them mattered more than practical considerations or financial logic. Sharing that story felt like honoring what Baron had done, like acknowledging that their relationship had value beyond the personal, that other people might draw hope from knowing that broken things could heal and that loyalty was real and powerful. Okay, Sam said, but Baron's comfort comes first. If he's stressed by people or cameras or anything else, we stop, no matter what anyone offers. Absolutely, Ray agreed. The magazine feature appeared 2 months later. 6 pages of professional photos showing Baron in the pasture, his silver coat gleaming, his powerful body captured in motion that looked like flight. The article told the story, from the gas station parking lot to the flood rescue to the present moment where Baron and Sam were healing together. The response was overwhelming. Letters arrived from across the country, from people sharing their own stories of rescue animals, of loyalty, of connections that defied practical explanation. Schools requested permission to use Baron's story in character education programs. Animal welfare organizations asked to feature him in fundraising campaigns, and the sponsorships materialized, not as abstract promises but as actual deliveries. Truckloads of premium hay, supplement deliveries, veterinary visits from specialists who wanted to ensure Baron received the best care possible. The money from the sponsorships went into an account dedicated to the ranch, not enough to eliminate Sam's debt. The money from the sponsorships went into an account dedicated to the ranch, not enough to eliminate Sam's debt, but enough to catch up on the mortgage payments, to buy time, to give Sam breathing room he hadn't had in years. 6 months after the flood, Sam stood in the pasture watching Baron graze in the late afternoon sun. His leg had healed, not perfectly, but well enough. He walked with a slight limp that would probably never go away, but he was alive and mobile and grateful for both. The ranch was still standing. The bank had agreed to restructure the loan after the publicity from Baron's story had demonstrated Sam's commitment and attracted the sponsorships that proved he could maintain payments. It wasn't prosperity, but it was survival. And survival was enough. Tom Henderson had stopped by that morning with an interesting proposal. "My granddaughter wants to learn to ride," he'd said, awkward but sincere. "I was wondering if maybe Baron, if you'd consider letting her come visit, not riding him yet, just being around him, learning about horses from someone who clearly knows what he's doing." Sam had agreed, because Baron's gift, his loyalty, his intelligence, his capacity for healing, deserved to be shared, not exploited, but offered to others who might benefit from witnessing what was possible when broken things were given the chance to mend. As the sun touched the horizon, Baron walked over to where Sam stood and rested his massive head on Sam's shoulder, the gesture that had become their ritual, the silent communication that said, "I see you, I trust you, we're in this together." "You know," Sam said quietly, stroking Baron's neck, "people keep asking me how I knew to buy you that day, how I recognized that you were special when everyone else saw worthless. And I tell them the truth, I didn't know. I just saw something in your eyes that looked like what I was feeling, desperate, tired, fighting because you didn't know what else to do." Baron's breath was warm and steady against Sam's neck. "I thought I was saving you," Sam continued. "Turns out you were saving me, not just from the flood, but from giving up, from believing that failure was inevitable. You reminded me that broken things can heal, that loyalty matters, that sometimes the best investments are the ones that make no financial sense." The wind carried the scent of rain, the first real rain in over a year, breaking the drought that had nearly destroyed them both. The land was healing, slowly, just like Sam, just like Baron. They stood together as darkness fell, man and horse, connected by something deeper than ownership or utility. Connected by choice and trust and the stubborn refusal to abandon each other when the world said it would be easier to quit. Some might call it luck that Sam had walked over to that trailer in the gas station parking lot. Some might call it coincidence that Barron had been there at exactly the moment Sam needed a reason to keep fighting. But Sam knew better. He'd stopped believing in random chance the day a horse broke through a barn door and charged into a flood to save him. Some connections transcended explanation. Some moments of grace arrived wrapped in mud and fury, offering salvation to those desperate enough to recognize it. The Porter Ranch still stood on 40 acres of stubborn earth. Barron still grazed in pastures that were slowly turning green. And Sam Porter still believed in second chances, in loyalty that defied logic, in the possibility that sometimes, when you save something broken, it saves you right back.